Welcome to the Wealth Beyond Just Money podcast with Rebecca Hayes.
Okay, today I want to dive into something that came up for me recently as I was dining out and I was seated next to these two people who were having lunch, and I could overhear their conversation because we were seated quite closely. And it just struck a chord in me because they were having this conversation, and I was probably seated next to them for 30 or 40 minutes. And like I said, I could hear everything they were saying. And when I first sat down, the topic of conversation was focused on the guy at the table was so concerned and frustrated because people around him were always saying these negative things. And so he was frustrated and annoyed that he was just receiving all of this negative energy out there. And then over the course of his meal and the conversation, I could hear, they covered so many different topics, things from like movies and, pop culture type, TV, etc., music, those types of things. And then, their careers and their work life, their travel, even so many different things, right? These were two friends catching up, and the conversation just went through so many different topics. And the interesting thing about it, like I said, was where the conversation started, which was this guy complaining about all of these things that other people were saying so negatively all the time. And then over the course of all of these topics, he proceeded to say negative thing after negative thing. I could not believe it. When I got up to leave, I was like trying to replay the conversation in my head, and there was not a single positive thing said about any of the topics. Like I said, they were broad ranging, so many different things, and still so many negative thoughts. Writing things off, discounting, whatever it was, just negative thought after negative thought after negative thought. And it got me thinking, because here this guy was frustrated that other people were being negative, and then here spent 30 minutes being nothing but negative. And so it got me thinking about sort of this idea of maybe we attract what we put out into the world. So if you're constantly putting out negative thoughts and negative comments and negative feelings, well, the only thing that you're going to attract is more negativity, right? Just think about it. Positive people, or glass half full people, are not going to want to spend a ton of time with the naysayers, with the people who are always looking at things from the other side, because it's draining to be around somebody who's constantly spewing negative thoughts and comments. It's difficult to keep your own energy high if someone else is being so, negative and low energy. And so I really just took a few minutes and thought about that, and then thought about it in my own life. And I wanted to share it here today because I think that so often we're looking out at what everybody else is doing and why they're doing it, and being frustrated with why somebody else is being so negative. Why am I receiving these negative thoughts? And instead, we're missing the point, which is that we are putting negative thoughts out there as well, right? So I think there's just a little bit of personal accountability there, personal awareness, that is so important for us to just take pauses. So if there are things in your life where you're like, I don't understand why this is happening to me, I don't understand why I'm receiving negative thoughts, I don't understand why I'm receiving bad luck, maybe we should be honest with ourselves and just take a step back and look at what is it that we're putting out there. What is it that we're attracting, whether intentionally or unintentionally, right? Maybe you missed it. Maybe you didn't mean to, and that's totally fine. But if we take a look at ourselves, we just might be able to find the things that it is that we're really looking for beyond us. And so that's just my one food for thought for today, because it really was such an interesting experience to sit there and observe it in somebody else. I think that sometimes it's easier to observe those things in other people than it is to see them in ourselves. But like I said, I'm sharing with all of you so that if there is something that isn't sitting quite right with you, then maybe the answer is closer than you think. All right, that's all I have for today. Until next time, keep building your wealth beyond just money.